Cool. I'm Sam Hill. I am a systems engineer for Fortinet, and Fortinet's been making a bit of investment in the Canterbury and South Island region. So we've got Kai down the back. If you haven't met Kai's our account manager for South Island, ex-Dell. So we've really only just been with Fortinet for the last 6 months. We're busy finding our feet and learning lots of new things. Hopefully you get to see a lot more of you all in the South Island over the next couple of months as we get out and about. So got a few things to cover off today. First one's obviously emerging risks and our Fortinet switching and wireless fabric that integrates with FortiGate. So we're quite well known, I guess, in market for our FortiGate technology. I think a lot of you in the room are already existing customers and have used that for a number of years. But we are finding that we haven't done a great job of messaging that we're not just a firewall vendor. We've got a lot of other technology and a lot of efficiency that can be gained by using that sort of full stack. So we'll cover that off. Another one that we're pushing quite heavily at the moment is our SOC as a service. We'll get more into depth about what that looks like. But yeah, SOC is really an interesting thing. If anyone in the room, is anyone in the room using a paid SOC in New Zealand? You're using a partner SOC? Yeah. And I'm guessing that the monthly costs for that are, not small, quite a large onboarding journey. Generally, we find people are spending, upwards of 80 hours just for onboarding. It's a huge problem. Security isn't just something that you throw in with a single firewall and forget about. So we'll talk more about that. And another one is public cloud. We're seeing a lot of changes with how people are using public cloud and some of the messaging that the hyperscalers are pushing around their native firewalling stacks. We think that we can do a better job of that. So emerging risks. Who here is well up to play with post-quantum encryption and what that means? I thought you'd put your hand up. Yeah, cool. Right. So security and risk management leaders really need to start planning for this move to post-quantum cryptography now. And that's largely due to the technology that's available today. Just around data storage is really quite scary. So if we look at like the previous way that cryptography has been handled, we've got this traditional way of basically generating random numbers. And we've got this asymmetric kind of relationship in encryption where, I like this analogy that someone told me once where, you get a pig and you put it through the mincer and you get bacon out the other side of it. If you stuff that bacon back up through the mincer, you're not going to get a pig out the other side. So a lot of that encryption has been handled by these asymmetric, algorithms that have really protected us for quite a long time. But it's a prediction game, and if you can predict numbers, then you can beat encryption. And the technology that's emerging now is going to be a big problem. So when we talk about post-quantum cryptography, it's not just a case of inventing a new algorithm. There's also hardware that needs to be considered. So if you're using an Intel chipset or an AMD chipset from a modern computer, you're looking at things like new instruction sets that have been pushed into the hardware of that computer that's capable of running those algorithms and making it more efficient. But that variable nature that you see within a microprocessor isn't great at high performance tasks. It's very good at generalized capabilities, but that sort of floating point nature of a CPU is not amazing at doing wire rate transactions. So, while everyone's been pushing these virtualized firewalls and virtualized network appliances for years, actually tuning those and getting the performance out of them to drive that scale has been a really difficult task. So we'll talk a little bit more about how Fortinet is solving that problem. So I think we need to really understand what the risk is with post-quantum cryptography. Basically, everything at the moment you can consider to be vulnerable. And that sounds like a big scare tactic from a vendor's perspective to come in here and just say everything that you're doing is wrong and everything's on fire. But the threat actors have really changed. Like we used to really think about threat actors as being rogue people on the internet, gangs, cyber criminals. But this pressure is really coming from within our own governments, not just in the West, but also in other countries as well. So if we look at the US, for example, we've got this picture here of Bluffdale, Utah, which was built quite a number of years ago as a data storage warehouse for cable taps. And that was covered quite extensively in the Edward Snowden leaks, and that's going back, sort of 10 years now. That's not something that's just happened recently. There's been a joint strategy in the West to build these data centers. So in 2026, the projection is currently 240 zettabytes of data storage alone that's going to get brought online. So I think, if we're going to look at this from a numbers perspective, we have to look at things like the amount of investment that's going into these data centers. This isn't just an imaginary thing that we're dreaming up and telling everyone to change over. This is real. So the quantum mandate is something that's come out of the US administration as of March this year. And from them, they're basically saying that anything that's running legacy cryptography is considered as already compromised. So really what we want to look at in terms of the data that's in transit today, we've got things like IPsec SD-WAN that's used for transiting data across multiple sites. We've got websites and published applications. If we're using traditional cryptography, basically we have to look at what the confidentiality lifetime of your data is. And if it's greater than the attacker's decryption horizon, then that's going to be a big problem. So that basically means that if you can store data for 5 years and then the cryptography capability to crack that is sold within that period, everything you're transmitting today is insecure. So health records, sensitive commercial information, business plans, anything that's got a privacy sort of, awareness to it. We really need to start thinking about how we secure that. And luckily the building blocks there are available today. So we've been working on post-quantum cryptography for a while now. The modules have been available in FortiOS starting in version 7, which came out in 2024. We've got FortiOS 8, which is taking that a next step further. So it's not just about integrating these modules into our cryptography suite, it's also about expanding them in the feature set. So we see other vendors out there in market that have done a good job of saying, we've got PQC for IPsec, but is it rolled into SD-WAN? No. Is it rolled into the TPM and the hardware of the device? Generally not. Is the administration of the firewall appliance PQC protected? Generally not. We're making a lot of strides in protecting that entire framework within a device and in a network and making it easy to use. So we've already done the hard work of generating the algorithms, embedding it within our software. We've got the hardware acceleration, which I was talking about earlier, that specialized circuitry that's inside each of our FortiGates, starting with SP5 ASIC, which is all in our current G series. And what that means is you can leverage that capability to get that wire speed performance. You're not just taking a massive hit by turning on new things. You're able to keep using the ASIC capability in the FortiGate, which has been a massive selling point for our hardware for quite a while. So when's FortiOS 8 coming out? This is where we're making most of our changes. Good news is it came out today, which is pretty exciting for us. Thank you. It's a little bit late, but it's okay. The other one, I think we've already talked about this quite a bit today, AI security. But we'll try and attack this from a different lens, which is just the visibility and governance side of things. So in FortiOS 8, we're focusing a lot more on the shadow IT discovery. So that's that real-time ability just to look into and identify all those AI applications, start looking at the AI MCP observability, understanding that protocol between assets rather than just looking at like large language models. We're looking at how LLMs interact with each other. It's probably not something we're going to see too much of in the New Zealand market of like AI models being deployed on-prem for the next couple of years. But as those sort of smaller agents become more available, having those MCP capabilities to enable on your firewall to understand what's happening between those agents is going to be really important. So, even something as small as like an ADG in our firewall series is going to be able to look at this stuff meaningfully and help protect you. So, yeah, it's pretty exciting. This thing's quite a large differentiator for us in market. So AI-aware application control traditionally, in the last year at least, has been something that's required a connection to cloud. So our competitors have, got this capability where you can take a screenshot of something, put it in like ChatGPT, it gets sent up to cloud, it gets processed and then sent back to the device and gets permitted or not. We're doing that all on Box. So you don't need to have this perpetual connection to cloud or send sensitive data to a third party to make sure that when it was already going to a third party anyway, that it's safe or effective. So having that capability on Box without a hit to performance is like a really, really key thing for data sovereignty. Additionally, that image-based capability is something that we're seeing a lot more of. A lot of people getting around the traditional controls of, preventing uploads of like Word documents, but you can get a screenshot and share that same information in a different medium. So you have to have these additional compute requirements to turn that image into a text, analyze it, and then send it off for discovery and filtering. So because that's all happening on Box, it's a lot faster and a lot more effective and a lot more private. Who here is aware of the security fabric and is using it? Nobody. Radio silence.
I'm aware of it, but I don't use it.
Okay. Okay. So we'll start off by having a look at what is fabric. We define it as our architectural approach to cybersecurity, integrating that broad portfolio of security networking solutions into a single system. So where you've traditionally seen a lot of point products for VPN or switching and APs and wireless, like it's very common to see a FortiGate deployment with an Aruba switch and maybe an Aruba AP or a Cisco switch and AP or Meraki. They're very good from the perspective of, having modern, reliable infrastructure, but managing separate tools is something that's like quite inefficient. You've got a team that focuses on APs, a team that focuses on switches. They don't talk to each other. You've got a security team. You can't share telemetry and security data between those platforms without, third-party products bringing in another vendor, writing custom scripts. So we've thought about this quite long and hard. So from like a traditional perspective, you've got this back in my day approach where you get your FortiGate, plug it into the internet, you get a SAD switch and a problematic access point. And they just become separate silos to manage. And it's painful because all of these capabilities here that we see don't talk to each other. The security and the switching and the wireless become separate domains. EDR becomes yet another point product that has to integrate with this. You've got your authentication through Radius, .1x, SIEM, ADC, SOAR is just complete overload. And they all have multiple tools, multiple vendors, multiple attack cases, lots of confusion. And what this really just leads to is just disjointed, desynchronized chains of dependencies that are difficult to drive. So yeah, it's slow, it's inefficient, low visibility, lost opportunity. If you're in that commercial sector, yeah, I love this one. Sold the dream, delivered a meme. I've seen that so many times. But with FortiOS, what we've done is made a lot of strides into including the FortiOS capability across our product portfolio. So in the networking space, we've obviously got, FortiExtender for cellular coverage, as well as FortiGates. We've got switches, SD-WANs, and APs. And that all integrates with our firewall capability, ZTNA, segmentation, and authenticator, and then the management and reporting engines for, FortiAnalyzer, FortiSIEM, and FortiManager. So using that common code base repeatedly across multiple products has allowed us to scale this up really effectively and have it talk to each other and deliver meaningful outputs. So on the infrastructure front, this is like a fairly typical what we call SD branch, where you've got FortiGate managing your perimeter, maybe it's doing SD-WAN as well, FortiSwitch and AP connected. The big differentiator here is that these are generally managed by discrete management stacks. Like if you're using like a Cisco switch, for example, you'd be managing that by CLI, or using DNA Center. Maybe you've got Aruba doing Aruba Central APs, different stacks all together that need to be plugged in and made to operate nicely together. In this model, everything's driven from the FortiGate If you've got a standalone deployment, like a single site, and you don't need like a large complex deployment, those things just plug and play. You connect them in, they turn up on the dashboard on the UI of the FortiGate. You can manage your entire switch, provision ports, do network access control, .1x, all of those lovely things that were like really hard to do 10 years ago is simple and easy in one web user interface. To manage it at scale, we start to look at things like FortiManager, which can be a cloud-based service or hosted on-prem, and that's designed to replicate those blueprints over and over again across multiple sites and orchestrate that management of all those products under one easy-to-use interface. But it doesn't stop there. We've got FortiAnalyzer that's there to collect all the logs from that infrastructure and correlate that information and then build it back together. So you can use FortiAnalyzer not just as a log collector, but something that can generate meaningful reports to your business in a real easy way. You know, you can create custom reports, you can get that telemetry out of FortiAnalyzer and then push back to the gates. So that's really part of the telemetry side of the whole Fortinet stack. These things that sit together in their own little silos can talk to each other. If you get a security event on a FortiAP or a switch, that can tell the FortiGate. That FortiGate can push that up to FortiAnalyzer. That FortiAnalyzer can push it to all your other sites. And the same thing starts to happen for all these perimeter capabilities that we've got as well. If you're using FortiSASE or FortiClient EDR or EMS, the telemetry that you get from each of those assets is designed to tie back into FortiAnalyzer, get pushed back to the gate. So something that's happening in Auckland can be replicated in Christchurch, you know, before that security event takes place. So if someone's running reconnaissance on your network, they've picked up that you've got multiple locations and they've scanned one site, then all your other sites are going to know that they're under attack. And a lot of that capability is automated. This isn't something you have to sit here and fine tune. This is sort of inherent stuff out of the box. And even if you don't have FortiAnalyzer, you can tie these FortiGates together. And that's where we're sort of starting to look at things for multiple levels of scale. Like you've got small sites that, you know, little small businesses that might have one or two locations. They don't need a FortiAnalyzer or a FortiManager, but you still want that security capability. So you can tie those two FortiGates together and get them to share telemetry between each other really effectively without spending heaps and heaps of money. It's not very well known, but we've got over 50 products. So when we start to look at what some of the key security capabilities are outside of this traditional ecosystem of FortiGate and FortiSwitch and FortiAP, application load balancer is a really big one, our ADC capability, you know, publishing web services. We've got a WAF module that can do all sorts of web filtering, AI bot detection, like all the stuff that you traditionally see in like a NetScaler is capable of being done in this platform. And the same thing with FortiMail. It's something that we've seen quite a lot of uptake in the Australian market. Sort of eating into that kind of Microsoft space is sitting in as a secure mail gateway with a lot of heuristic capabilities and rules that then can share that information back into your security fabric. So yeah, broad visibility in that single pane of glass, not having a whole lot of bespoke tools all separated across different vendors, or even within a vendor having multiple tools. It's all synchronized. So you can get massive visibility in these platforms really easily. And those integrated solutions like EDR and email security just add additional benefit in your environment to share that telemetry in real time. And you can use that automated data to get your infrastructure to protect you against those threats much easier. So in terms of your business, eliminating those security silos, making it easy to manage, decreasing that time to detect and time to respond by allowing the network and security fabric to heal itself rather than waiting for manual intervention. And then reducing that cyber skills gap, which I know has affected everybody quite heavily in the last few years. But yeah, don't just take my word for it. There's been quite a few studies done on this in the last few years. So Forrester has a report, which is linked down the bottom there. In this one particular case study, there was a 300% return on investment for using this FortiLAN Edge. So that's just the FortiGate with switch and AP. And that was largely derived just from the efficiency gained in that infrastructure. So yeah, 80% reduced unplanned downtime, a huge benefit in terms of like net present value. In this particular case, total net benefit was $9.9 million after accounting for all of the costs and risks. And then 75% faster network security response. So that's some meaningful information. It's not just a data sheet point. We've also got quite a large increase in net ops efficiency, so 50% increase there, a payback period of less than 6 months, 20% technology cost saving, 60% reduced risk of external breaches, and 50% faster time to market. And that's a big thing in the MSP space, and the partners that we're working with is a lot of people are trying to get these security products to market, but going out with that traditional view of going, oh, we want best of breed, and then tying it together is a really hard thing to do from a product perspective. You've got lots of negotiation you need to do. You're going to get, less discount by fragmenting that against multiple vendors, tying it all together, putting a service wrap around it, getting the specialist skills. It's a really, really difficult task to have with low margins. So reducing that time to market is really essential. And we're seeing our partners starting to take this stuff to market more seriously, rather than just having traditional offerings. So going back to our original problems, instead of siloed, we've got integrated. Instead of complex fault resolution, we've got collapsed tool sets in the same TAC across all of our products. Instead of slow provisioning, we've got unified management and common OS and user interfaces. We've got co-term capability within the broader ecosphere of Fortinet, so we can tie a lot of that stuff in rather than having multiple refresh cycles. And excellent APIs. If anybody here is working in the development space or doing a lot of automation, please reach out, because we can grant you access to FNDN, that's Fortinet Developer Network, where all of those APIs can be available to you for scripting. And we've got some great Terraform capabilities as well. So on the user interface front, this is basically what it looks like. This is my home setup, just a few screenshots of that. So pretty common interface from a FortiGate. On the left-hand pane here, you've got your Wi-Fi and switch controller, managed 40 switches on the left here, and they all just show up nicely in the user interface. I've got a bunch that show us offline because power's so expensive now. But you can manage your software versions in there. This is all automated, so you can have automated update cycles where a new FortiOS release comes out and that just upgrades overnight. You can change windows, do it manually if you want. You get a nice visual interface of how your infrastructure hangs together, all the core ports that plug into each other. In places where you've got high availability, you also get logical grouping of switches. Rather than just a standalone switch, you got MC-lag capability of multiple interfaces being managed as one logical unit. You still see that fabric expanded with the links in between them of how it's configured. And then you've got your actual port configuration here, where you can set all your descriptions, manage your spanning tree sessions, manage your VLANs. You can manage your power over Ethernet as well there, and then you've got all of this device information on the right-hand side, along with packets sent and received. So you get a huge amount of information just out of the box. And this isn't something that's difficult to deploy. Like, part of becoming an EC is we can get hands-on hardware quite easily, and this stuff just shows up into the box in Taiwan, and you plug it in and it's literally there, and you go, yes, approve that into Fabric, and you're basically done. As soon as you've defined those network interfaces on your FortiGate, they're automatically propagated to the switch and become a VLAN that you can configure. So these days of invoking commands against every single port in your network are kind of over. You can group select these and go, these 4 ports in this VLAN, done. It's so simple. And one of the really cool features is NAC policies, which are baked into the device inherently. We do have a product called Fortinet, which is designed as kind of like a ICE, like Cisco ICE, if you're familiar with that. It's a replacement for that, where you can do device profiling and all sorts of like flexible device policies to manage your network. But there is quite a lot of capability just in the FortiGate that's designed for that small, medium business market, where you can do things like OS profiling and then map them to a VLAN. So in my case, picking up a Windows device and saying, I don't trust it, I'm going to put it into a quarantine VLAN. And until I address that, it's going to stay in that position. You'll see up here as well that you've got this category. You can look at things such as devices and users and EMS tags. So if you're using, EMS on your endpoints, you can start looking at the profiles that are generated against that host. You can say, great, we've got up-to-date AV, but these 3 applications are out of date. Your EMS tag's going to get demoted down to a particular level, and that security policy is enforced at the switch or AP layer. It says, great, everything's looking pretty good, but these 3 things are high risk within the business. I don't like that, and I'm going to put you in a VLAN with less reachability in the network. So you can be really flexible with how you define this stuff in your environment, and it's not cumbersome to configure. And this is just one menu in the user interface, and it's really easy to manage. On the wireless front, the same thing again. You just plug in your APs, they adopt into the network, you approve them, and then you allocate a profile with them. Sticking on your SSIDs, you can do .1x on them, same as with like Aruba and Cisco. And one of the really cool things that we're doing in here is MPSK. So particularly for people in like hospitality industry, you can essentially give someone a voucher, and that voucher matches them to a VLAN. So we had one customer recently operating a hostel, and they were like, we want to have a Chromecast in every single room, but we don't want a cable to every room for cost pressure. But we don't want people in the neighboring room being able to Chromecast broadcast to other rooms. So every room essentially ended up with its own VLAN, but having thousands of VLANs across an entire building is a really difficult thing to manage in a traditional network architecture. But on the FortiGate, it was simple because you can have a basic script that sets up the interface for each host, assigns it to a new VLAN, and then propagates that to the access point. And the access point gives out a voucher that matches you into that VLAN. So you can basically deal with someone at the front desk and go, you're in room 203, here's the key for 203, and that key matches them into VLAN 203 along with their Chromecast, and they're fully isolated. It's just one use case of what's available inside of this platform out of the box without any additional capabilities. So just going to circle back to the SOC as a service capability. This is something that's been really expensive in market, and we see a huge amount of pressure in this space. I think traditionally there's been a hesitancy to spend a lot of capital on security products, and driving people over that line has been a battle for the last sort of 5 or 10 years. But once you've arrived in that space, how do you actually make sure that you're getting protection? Because you're not just going to get protection because you buy a FortiGate and put it in your network. You still have to configure it, you still have to log it, you still have to look at the logs that are coming out of it and make discernible actions. But that setup cost to go for a SOC is not trivial. So expanding that to that next level and going, well, you've made the investment, let's make sure you're actually getting the value out of it, is kind of like the next conversation that we need to have. And so you can go down through a partner SOC, and there's some great people doing some great work, but it's not an accessible thing to everyone in the market. There's a lot of small to medium businesses in New Zealand that are highly vulnerable to these sorts of attacks that we're seeing, and they're not even always aware of them going on, and that's part of the problem. We're seeing people get hacked in the middle of the night and they come in and nothing's working. You go, where's your logging? Oh, we don't have a log server. Or do you have a SAM? We don't have a SAM. We don't have a SOC. So we want to make sure that people are actually getting the protection that they need, and they can make actionable, intelligent decisions out of that. So SOC as a service is a product capability that we're offering at the moment. It's very inexpensive. You're talking several hundred to $1,000 a year for each hardware device. So only FortiGates, if you've got 40 APs and 40 switches attached to them, they fall under the same license. And that service has been expanded into things like FortiSASE and EMS. So if you're a FortiSASE customer and you're using the premium tier or above, that's automatically included. You automatically get access to our global SOC 24/7 that covers that entire endpoint. So what it really means from a capability perspective is that we have this 24/7, 365 monitoring following the sun globally. It's all triaged with AI and machine learning. So those logs that we pick up out of infrastructure, they get exported to cloud securely. They go through our own proprietary process of being scrubbed and analyzed, but there is a human being that's sitting on the backside of this looking into it and making that final decision as to whether or not it's a security threat or white noise. And then it comes through to your partner or yourself as a notification. And what's quite impressive with this is that we can have this escalated within 15 minutes of an event occurring. And beyond that, that notification window, there's also remediation guidance that comes alongside it. It's not just a, hey, here's an issue, see you later. There's actually like an actionably intelligent thing that comes out the other side of it and some support for how to amend that in your network. You also get a single pane of glass in the cloud to track any of this and alerts. So it's not just a blind thing where you fire it off into the ether and you can forget about it. You can keep eyes on it as well. And there's quite a good view of it here that you can see just the number of alerts, what their sort of level is, what kind they are. We've got these categories over here around risky downloads or botnets, etc. So you can actually keep track of your infrastructure quite easily. And the onboarding for this is really straightforward. Instead of multiple weeks, there's no additional professional services requirement. You buy the additional SKU or co-term it with your your existing fleet. We get it set up in the back end, and for a customer that says, has a couple of dozen sites, we're looking at 1 to 2 days of onboarding. So yeah, really quick and effective.
Sorry, Sam. I've got to give you 1 more minute.
One more minute. Far out. Where do we go?
A minute left. Wow.
It's going to take me a minute to figure out what's so important. It's going to take a minute. We'll keep it at SOC, but yeah. In terms of retention, 12 months. We're not just keeping this stuff monthly and discarding it. So, if you are going through an audit process, we can store this data for a meaningful amount of time. And we are meeting all of the usual framework requirements. We've got the European GDPR that we are supporting in terms of privacy, the MITRE ATT&CK framework, HIPAA compliant in healthcare, and then PCI in the payments system. So yeah, quite a good capability, very flexible. Yeah, cool.
Awesome.
Thank you.